Cool. Cam, we're live. Thanks for giving your time to share some of your learnings and experience and your life story with everybody in the Facebook group.
Yeah, thank you, G. I don't know how interesting I'm going to be, mate, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, I think you've got a fantastic story. So, I guess my first question is, do you want to maybe just tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Who are you? How old are you? Where do you live? What do you do for a living?
I live in Newcastle, New South Wales. I'm 59. I'm 60 early next year. I'm a physio, own a business, have done that for the last 30 years and, planning to work till I'm 75, hopefully, because I really enjoy my work. I've got 3 young children, all under 10.
Boys, girls?
Yeah, I've got a girl who's 9, a boy that's 7, and a boy that's 3.
Okay.
And we're a very, very sporty family. We've got 6 days a week kids sport.
And what sports are the kids playing?
Dance for the girl, dancing, swimming, tennis, soccer, touch football. I think that covers it at the moment.
Okay.
I try and keep them pretty active.
And how many of those are sports that you've played or had an influence in them getting involved in?
Yeah, and cricket. We did a year of cricket with my daughter, but not this year because she's got too much on. Yeah, I had swimming coaching, I had tennis coaching, I had cricket coaching. No dance. You couldn't have ever convinced me to do that as a young boy. That's my daughter's thing. I played some footy. So we've sort of mirrored sports that I know a bit about. Because I'm at least interested in what they do in that sense, and sort of one day I might be able to help out a little bit.
Okay. And then you've had quite an interesting journey with your cricket in that you had quite a long layoff. Do you want to just give us a little bit of background on sort of your formative cricketing years until you stopped playing?
Yeah, cricket was everything to my family, including particularly my dad and myself in summer. He was the person that threw balls at the nets. I played from probably under 10s right through to grade cricket and under 21s. And when I was 20, I moved to Sydney to study and I had to self-support. And there was no way I could work 40 hours a week at university, 20 hours a week in pubs and, building sites and whatever else I did to try and survive and then play cricket. And so I actually retired when I was 20 and that was the end of my cricket career. Eventually got married and my wife's mother's church team were short players. And Zoe said, did you ever play cricket? And I said, yeah, I played a bit of cricket. She said, do you mind filling in? And I thought, why not? And this was very social grade, so I padded up and I borrowed a bat and I went out there and promptly got a first ball duck. And it made me mad. That sort of lit a fire under me and I thought, bugger this. I'm going to try and fix this. I can't, succeeding is nice, but I hate failure. And so I joined that team and I spent half a season on average 6. It was a catastrophe. I couldn't see the ball. I couldn't hit the ball. In 40, whatever it was 36 years, I'd changed physically and I'd forgotten how to play. So, I decided to practice and I get quite obsessive about things. So I bought myself a bowling machine and I got myself some coaching. And over the next 3 seasons, I practiced, 2, 3, 4 times a week through winter as well as summer. And I got myself to the point that I was averaging, low to mid 30s in a social grade of cricket, but I still wasn't, satisfied with where I was at, but I thought it was what it was. Do you want me to continue about how I ran into you and what we did?
Yeah, we'll get there in a bit. I'm just interested to know. So something that stands out to me from what you said, that you stopped playing cricket because you couldn't manage the varsity plus the work because you were self-funding yourself.
Yeah.
So when you did give it up, how did you feel about giving up cricket at that time?
Mate, I didn't mind because I had so much else on my plate. It it had become an impediment to the next phase of my life. And I'd reached a certain standard, but, I was never going to make a living out of it. And so I just went to going to the gym, going for swims, riding bikes, and staying active as opposed to playing competitive sport. But I don't think it ever motivated me to do those things as much as it did to actually play something that actually had a competitive side to it. So I missed that part of it. And I also missed the friendships from being in a team. I always enjoyed having teammates. Most of my friends as a young person in hindsight were sports friends because we had that in common. So I think it was quite a big loss to my life not to do it, but it wasn't possible. So I'm a fairly practical person. I sort of pushed that aside and moved on to the next phase.
Okay. And then, interesting. So, it sounds like you had a lot on your plate young, juggling your studies and working and funding yourself through that. And then I guess my next question is, when you did start to work again, you said, you got yourself a ball machine and you're very meticulous in how you go about doing things. So it sounds like you've got a really good work ethic. When would you say that sort of started for you?
I think I learned it at university. I think being forced to survive as well as study, it showed me that I could do a lot more than I thought I could do. I didn't have a holiday for 4 years through my degree, and I probably worked 70 to 80 hours a week. And it actually made the years that followed that, nothing was hard after that. So, I just learned that if you put your head down, and you can do lots of things you don't think you can do. And that carried very well onto my professional life and possibly into my, my late stage cricket career.
Okay. And it's interesting you say that because, I think one of the biggest excuses people use for not being able to actually undertake something or to fix something is they say they don't have time.
Yeah, I think that's true. I just think you've got to be efficient. I don't watch TV. I saw a Jim Rohn lecture once that suggested that, watching TV is watching somebody else get paid to make a living. The only thing I watch at all is shortened versions of cricket highlights and footy highlights, and that's enough. I'd rather be out there in the nets hitting a ball than watching something on TV. I'd rather be in the pool swimming than doing something passive like telly. So you just have to get organised. I get up at 4, I go to bed at 8. I make sure I've got time to do it.
And that's actually such a valuable nugget that you've actually given there when you said it's about efficiency. And I know you're a humble person, but from what you've built a pretty successful business, haven't you?
Yeah. That work ethic has flowed on to work. I've got a good solid practice. I've got great people around me, and I've been able to retain great people, which is really satisfying. I've got 18 people who work there, I think, at the moment, or 17 people that work there. So I've achieved what I wanted to with my career, which is really satisfying, and I actually really like it. So again, I look at people retiring and I think, why would you do that? I can't play that much sport. So, I'll work till I'm 75 if my health permits it.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. It is. It's literally, I think it's two things. The first thing you said there, it's about efficiency of time. And in order to become efficient with time, you need to be able to prioritize. And also, I think recently, I've also stopped watching television. I hadn't heard that analogy before. It's like, but there's so much more efficient use of time that you could be doing, like bettering yourself, learning new skills, challenging yourself in the way that you think, rather than, like you say, watching some mundane fantasy nonsense on TV, which is, as you said, I can't quote verbatim, but, watching somebody else get paid to do, what?
Something. Yeah. It's,
to distract you.
I'm a self-improvement junkie. I want to try and improve myself every day. But I think that just keeps life interesting and stimulating. And so cricket was a good fit for me to come back into a sport because it gave me a goal where I could direct those energies as well. So rather than looking at my swim times diminish over 30 years, I had a very low batting average I could do something about. And so it's been a good place to funnel those kind of energies outside of work.
Yeah, and now coming back to the cricket, so you got this ball machine. You averaged 6 in that first season when you helped out. How often were you hitting balls?
Once I got the ball machine, I'd probably with other practice, probably 3 to 4 times a week. And that accelerated enormously once I met you. But I was doing some consistent practice, but, I didn't always have a directed practice. There was never a goal. I'd go down and hit balls. And just through volume of hitting balls, I still improved, but I was running on my own theories with no justification aside from, look at a video on YouTube going, how does AB de Villiers hit an on drive? But because I couldn't see myself do it, and because I didn't have somebody else breaking it down who knew what they were doing, it wasn't sufficient. I wasn't able to achieve that.
Okay. And, oh man, I've just almost lost my thought now. You said that your training volume actually accelerated, once we started to work together. I'm interested to know, what do you think the reason for that was? I mean, you were already 3 to 4 times a week is a lot.
Yeah, well, partly COVID. See, COVID coincided with me not being able to go into, we had enough work in my business for my staff. And so I wanted to keep their jobs and keep my business intact. We didn't have enough work for me. So I was able to run my business from home really 2 hours a day while everybody else did things. I didn't make a lot of money, but it didn't really matter. And so I needed another project. So, I started another master's, and that occupied me a bit, but I wanted to do something physical. And when I saw your ads about fundamentals, it just made sense to me. And so once we got together and I had some specific stuff to practice, I made practice really interesting because each week I had new drills and I had video feedback, and all the video feedback was fantastic. And I could send them to you and look at what I was doing and go down and record. So I went from hitting probably 400 balls a week to hitting, probably 1,000 balls a week.
Yeah,
and I did that.
You certainly submitted.
12 weeks.
Out of all the people I work with, you made the most use of the fact that you can, through the course of the program, submit as much drill work as you like each week.
Yeah, and I didn't submit a quarter of what I did. I thought I'd be driving you crazy. So I thought I'll try and keep it purposeful. I could have, you could have just been inundated and just had me as your only client. And I didn't think I was paying you that much. So I thought I've got 12 weeks or whatever the program was, 16 weeks to absolutely maximize this. So unless it was absolutely pouring rain, I was down there at the nets at 8 a.m. and I'd spend 2 hours at the nets going through all the different drills, including spitting balls at myself and catching practice.
Yeah.
And then doing a run and doing a stretch. And, I'd turn it into a 2.5 hour training session. But it was so interesting because each time I was developing something new. And I think, as you remember, I took weeks and weeks and weeks to get the no feet drill.
Yeah.
Correct. And finally, small change in my grip and understanding the follow through and all the individual things we spoke about finally clicked and it came together. And that in itself has made a huge difference to my batting.
And seeing as you mentioned fundamentals, sort of, what would you say is the main difference been for you, looking at sort of like your conventional approach to coaching and sort of technique-based stuff versus having three odd things to focus on and train consistently? What sort of impact did that have for you? And I know you at times you were a little bit frustrated. You felt like it wasn't coming. But, I could see the progress. And when it did all click, sort of what were the benefits that you experienced?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the coaching was really specific. I think I told you earlier, I didn't want a cheerleader. I didn't want somebody telling me that what I was doing was good. Was happy for you to acknowledge that's correct, but I wanted to know what was wrong. I had a mentor who was a business mentor who was an excellent fellow, John Davey, who was he coached water polo at a fairly high level, and I used him as a performance coach for work. And he said to me once, he said, you look at the very top performers in a field, and this is the top, 0.1 of 1%, and they're the only ones out of even elite players who want criticism and want critique. She said the most people just want to be told they're going well, and they want a boost to their confidence. Now, I didn't need a boost to confidence. Confidence is something that's going to happen to me when I perform. I wanted to know why I could see somebody who was my age could average 60 when I could only average 30. There had to be something I was doing wrong that they were doing right. And I couldn't figure it out for myself. And you were able to figure that out.
So looking back now in hindsight, what would you say have been the things that have helped you close that gap from 30 to now? I mean, you've been doing unbelievably well.
I think the specific drill, the fact that every session is so purposeful. I think all the work on, I guess you never called it that, but all the work on the psychology of batting, putting yourself in a box, relaxing between balls, playing in context, but treating each ball on its merits. Because I used to pre-plan things. I'd miss a shot, then think I'm hitting you out of the park next.
Okay.
Now that's, if the ball isn't there to hit out of the park, you shouldn't even think about hitting it out of the park. So it was really everything, all these components to cricket integrate to produce a performance. And so it was fundamentals. It was specifics about how to play certain shots, but integrating that with a better mental approach, and particularly having a really clear mind and being relaxed when I'm facing the bowler. And I think one thing you said to me once, and it wasn't in the coaching, but it was something you brought up. I mentioned that I was getting out when I was tired. And you said, Cam, you're not tired. You think you are. Visualize yourself getting clapped off the field when you hit the winning runs. And think of the positives about your batting. Tell yourself you're not tired. And that made a huge difference. I've been buggered, and if I start thinking that, I think, okay, I'm going to win this game. I want to be clapped off when I retire or when I've hit those runs. You only think you're tired. You're probably half tired when you think you are.
What's it?
So just the integration of all those
energy
those
flows. Energy flows where attention goes.
Yeah, it very, very much does, doesn't it?
So
there was not one thing. It was the fact that the coaching and the psychology of it was so comprehensive and so integrated. And I think it met a sweet spot, even though I might have sounded frustrated sometimes. I appreciated specific critique, and I didn't want you to tell me I was doing it right. I wanted you to tell me I was doing it right when I was doing it right, and put all the time into telling me how to do it better. And that's what we did. Yeah. And Ludamos was a fantastic interface to do that. From what I've seen, it's probably improved since we used it. Mm. But I'm very visual in how I learn, and being told something and not shown on me with an image wasn't sufficient. Once I could see it on myself, I could then do something about it. So that was really, really effective.
So would you say that's also like a big component that was different, but for you being a visual person, had a huge benefit as opposed to, say, having a coach in the nets who's busy telling you what to do and could even demonstrate for you, but still lacking the understanding of what it should look like and feel like for yourself?
Yeah, very much so. My job's movement analysis is a big part of physio. I've got to do gait analysis and throwing analysis and to some extent, even fast bowling analysis. And I need that kind of information for myself. And you think you look like something when you bat, and you see a video and you look like something completely different. You think you're wonderful with a shot, and you look dreadful. But if you don't see it, you can't change it. I don't think. Well, I couldn't change it. I just wasn't good enough to.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up, because I remember when you first submitted, when we were sort of started looking at your pull shot, and it was quite rigid and jerky.
Yeah.
And then, and how everything evolved I just want to touch on something you mentioned earlier. You said, I want to know what I'm doing wrong. But for me, it's not so much about what you're doing wrong. It's about what you can improve.
Yeah.
Like there's a different psychology to it. It's like you can always find something good and then focus on that and build on that first. And then you continue building, rather than, I think a lot of conventional, and when I'm using the term coaching loosely, because I certainly used to instruct people, but when you're instructing, you're always looking for problems and you're always telling people what's wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I agree.
Which has a really negative effect on their self-confidence.
You're giving a lot of information, which was useful to me. I lost my train of thought. There was something I was going to say related to that, but yeah, no, I'll get it. But that's
all right. So one of the things that also stood out to me is that, when we did our batting diagnosis call, you were very specific. You'd already identified some key things that you felt were sort of holding you back or causing you difficulty. Can you recall what those things were?
Yeah, I think firstly, if I, did an audit on my batting, which I constantly did in my own head, there'd be very few balls I was getting out on that I necessarily should have got out on. I looked at those balls and thought that was because it was such a good ball. There was nothing, each time I got out, it was my fault. Occasionally you get an unplayable ball on off stump that was a leg cutter that you snicked a first slip and you did everything right. But generally, if I looked at my dismissals, it was me. And I knew it was me, but I didn't know what to do about it. The second thing was my radar was off. There was something about my swing. I'd try and hit a ball to cover and it would go to mid-off. I'd try and hit a ball to mid-off and it would go to mid-on. Even when I middled it, I hit some fantastic shots out of the park that went about 30 degrees in the opposite, the wrong direction. I still got a 6 out of it, but they weren't.
And everybody's like, great shot, and you're going, it wasn't meant to go there.
Yeah, it was like, how did you do that, Cam? And I thought, I've got no idea how I even did that. So I knew there was something wrong. But again, I've tried to put a lot of time into figuring out what, and I couldn't. Now, in hindsight, I can look back and go, well, it was my stance. It was my grip. It was where my back was and my back lift. It was my weight distribution. Like, it was the whole bloody thing. And it took a lot of work to do, but in the end, we were able to achieve a lot of it. I'm still a long way from perfect. I still think I've got a couple of years to improve before I suspect that, natural aging is going to gradually slow me down. But I'm a way better cricketer than I was, in the pre-coaching and the post-coaching era. They're just completely different batsmen.
I think some of the other things that stood out to me, one of the things you said, I'm really good in a run chase. I can't score a run when I bat first. Is that still the same, or has that changed to some degree?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter now. Again, I think in a run chase, the pressure was on, so I concentrated better. Mm-hmm. And when you're batting first, it wasn't. Now I'm batting first with a specific goal. I try and assess the conditions and think in my own head, this attack, this situation, this is how much I've got to be scoring. I'm still on a run chase, but I'm batting first, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think having a goal helps me. And so I just have to set a more arbitrary one when I'm actually actually batting first. I'd still rather bat second because I know exactly what I need to achieve.
Yeah.
But batting first isn't a barrier now to scoring runs.
Okay. And something interesting happened, while we were working together. I remember you'd wanted to bat top order, but because you were so good at chasing, you actually got shunted down the order because
Yeah.
people are like, well, you can close games out. Are you still batting down the order, or have you managed to move back up the order?
It just depends on the cricket. In my grade cricket, which is open, I'm opening. In 55s rep cricket, they batted me 3, and it was, in 50s Division 1, where there's all this different cricket I've got access to.
You've just led into one of my questions, which was going to be, you're playing a lot of different divisions. What are they now?
Oh, my preference is to face the first ball, because particularly in 35 over cricket, which is in 40 over cricket, I like to know that I've got time. And I view fielders in the slips as opportunities because they're not in the covers and they're not on the fence. And I prefer to bat up the order, but in the end, I don't mind. I adapt my play to the game context as long as I've got enough time. I've had some really good knocks coming in 6 and 7 and chasing down totals, and that's been just as satisfying as scoring a good opening stance. I actually don't mind where I bat now. I'll bat according to the team, and I think that's something I've learned. You talk to most guys, and they'll bat a certain way. They're an attacking player, or they're a bloke that glides around the corner, or they do. They'll tell you what their style is. I've tried to create a game where I can just bat according to how it's necessary. I've scored a 45 in singles because it was a slow outfield and it's what the game demanded. I've scored a 96 in 48 balls because it was a different context. So I think, again, learning to adapt my play to conditions and context was critical, and I couldn't do that. I was great on a road, a flat pitch. I was terrible when things got tough. I've got the ability now to score in harder circumstances.
And I guess
I probably don't hit as many sixes because I take less risks as well.
Yeah, and that's ultimately where we want to be. Like you touched on it earlier, good ball's a good ball, a bad ball's a bad ball. And then it's about being adaptable to the situation, being able to actually sum it up, ask what's required for the team in those conditions, and have the skills, both mentally and physically, to be able to adapt.
Yeah, very much. I just didn't have the skills to be able to adapt previously. I'd score a 50 in boundaries. If I got a single, it was an edge. It was either a block ball or a 4 or a 6. What I have had to do is get fitter, because now I hit singles and 2s. I've got to do all this bloody running that I didn't used to have to do. So I've actually had to change myself a bit physically, but that's, again, another positive of improving in a sport.
Yeah, and you're not getting tired anymore.
No, I'm still getting tired, but I can function, mate. That's the difference.
And then, so Cam, tell me, are you a tech savvy person?
Am I?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I do my best, but I'm not.
Okay, so quite a big leap of faith then at 58 to undertake online training. What sort of thoughts were going through your mind in making that decision, and how did you go about making it?
I guess I spoke to Mitchell Woods.
Oh yes,
when I was sussing you out, and I basically I rang him and actually said, what's this like? And he said it's great. He said I got heaps out of it, and he did the video stuff too, I assumed.
Yeah.
And I thought if some old farmer can do this, I surely can. Sorry, Mitch, if you're listening.
No, because look, I was shocked when Mitch was on the call with me, and I think he was 51 at the time. He's like, okay, cool. I've never had any formal cricket coaching. I'm a farmer out in, it was also in your area, New South Wales area, or just outside. And I was thinking, man, this is incredible that a guy's never had any formalized coaching, and as a farmer, he's going to embark on online training.
Yeah. Oh, I think self-employed, mate. He has to figure out things every day. You know, that's a practical person. You know, I'm probably not that practical, but to some extent, you've still got to get from A to B, don't you?
Yeah.
And that was my path from A to B, where I wanted to be, or hopefully at the time. So I didn't mind. You know, I had to learn how to bloody edit videos in that stupid Apple software, and it took ages. It was really frustrating, but eventually I figured it out. And there was no help online, but eventually, by stuffing it up 100 times, I was able to send you coherent videos, and it was great. I learned a new skill. I use it for my daughter's video editing now, so it wasn't a bad thing.
And it probably got you to view your footage more times than just once, so
I
you
was
could
doing
see
it a
and
lot.
learn.
Oh yeah, that was the hardest part. Actually, was learning to edit the videos before I uploaded them, because I'd do a video and leave the camera running, and it'd be 10 minutes. Then I'd hit a ball into the camera and it'd fall over, and I thought, oh, that'll finish that one. And then I'd have to take it home and figure it out. But no, listen, it's doable, and believe me, if I can do it, I'm sure anybody who puts their mind to it can do it. It really wasn't that hard. I just had to learn a few processes.
And tell me, once you did get started, did you have an expectation in your mind of how it would work versus how it actually was?
No, not really, mate. I went into it with an open mind. It ultimately gave me what I wanted. It's interesting. There's a coaching philosophy, and we spoke about it. And I did this when I did a little bit of junior cricket coaching training, so I could take my daughter's, under nines team, under 10s team, and you see this everywhere. And it was, batsmen should develop their own style. And I thought, that just didn't work for me. But you see it written in nets, you see it written in blogs. Watch the ball and hit it. Develop your own way. And they actually say in this in the Australian cricket coaching for juniors, the Australian style is learn your own way. And I thought, I've got lots of mates that learn their own way, and they're bloody horrible cricketers. I just think it's an incorrect philosophy. There's a correct way to swing a golf club. There's a correct way to swing a baseball bat. There's a correct way to punch someone in the nose. There's got to be a correct way to hit a cricket ball.
There's fundamentally sound principles, and then the style comes around that. So, not everybody throws a jab the same way, but fundamentally, the best will have the same principles in place, which allow them to generate maximum speed and power.
Yeah, that's right. It's weight distribution and where the head is and those kind of things. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that message is lost in the message of develop your own style. Well, if that's the only message people are getting.
I cannot believe that is actually happening in Australia now. I mean, that was a big English thing a while ago, and they saw their asses. If you look at the national side, and I was just thinking, as you said that, I was like thinking, mate, how is this possible? Because those great Australian teams of the late 80s, mid to late 80s, all through the 90s, into the early 2000s, I'm pretty sure if you told those guys that, they'd be like, that's ridiculous. It's not true.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is what they're doing at a higher level, but this is what we were taught at the very beginning of a coaching career. And maybe that is applicable to kids, but still, but they said this is the Australian philosophy.
How's a kid going to know what's the best way to swing a bat?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And that's not how I tried to coach them. I said, this is how you hold it, and this is how you swing it, and let's break it down. And, you get so far with 8-year-olds, but I just tried to keep it fun. But
I think the question here would be, do you want to hit the ball really, really far and further than anybody else? Yes. Okay, this is how you do it.
Yeah, that's right. So your philosophy gelled with my belief system. So that's where it worked really well.
Beliefs. Yeah, that's good. You just touched on that. Do you have any sort of like values and beliefs that sort of have shaped your life in business, sport, social interactions?
Yeah, probably. And it does fit in with this in terms of a business career, my professional career, and also my cricket. And I discovered this through cricket, which was interesting. I remember being in year 6, and my dad and I had spent the entire winter doing throwdowns to, a beginner cricketer. I played one season in the nets. And I remember in year 6, suddenly being the best kid in year 6. And in year 6, it actually gelled that the more you practice and the more you do, the better you become. But there's a part B to that. It's got to be the right practice, and you have to have a good coach. And so everything I've done has tried to revolve around working in my business. I try and work harder than my competitors and harder than my staff. And I've always sought good mentors, whether they be business coaches or, clinical mentors in physiotherapy. And in cricket, I was coached in tennis, I was coached in swimming, and I was coached in cricket. Dad went and did his coaching certificates because there were no coaches around in my day. And I just learned the value of coaching. So I think those two things are probably the two keys to everything for me. Work as hard as you can and get the right advice.
I think the second one is obviously incredibly valuable because, and it probably also ties in with what you said right at the beginning when we started talking. You talked about efficiency. So hard work with no purpose and no feedback is a waste of time.
Absolutely. I've got friends who work hard, but they're figuring it out for themselves and they don't improve. All they do is reinforce their own bad patterns.
100%. And sadly, that's probably where most of the players that I've talked to, guys, it's heartbreaking. No, I train 3-4 days a week. I average 20 every year. Okay, no, but I'm always improving. Or are you improving? And again, it's about, if you can't measure what you're doing and you can't get feedback, you're just going to be spinning around, like you said, your mates who work harder than everybody else, but stuck in the same place all the time.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure the people that have done better have just had better coaching as well as a good attitude. But the best thing about the whole process is I'm now enjoying my cricket way more.
Brilliant.
Batting's my happy space. If I'm out there in the middle, I'm as happy as I can be in life because I just love hitting cricket balls. So being able to bat for longer and know more about what I'm doing and realising that I've now got a high level. So as I deteriorate, I've still got more longevity because I've got a higher place to fall from. It is really satisfying. And so I'm really enjoying my cricket now. The return on investment from improving to that extent has just been phenomenal.
Yeah, and I mean, thanks for giving me the opportunity to help you.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was a really good experience. It's what you need, Gio. You need a part 2. You need an advanced course.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I have got a lot of ideas on an advanced course, but in discussing with you now, you're already doing all of those things. Which
I can't. Well, I can't do any of the fancy shots because I've never bothered learning them.
You don't need them.
Maybe I don't.
Again, mate, you just got to look at. Again, it's about limiting risk and stacking the odds in your favor within the context and the situation of the game. Now, there's a reason Virat Kohli averages over 50 in T20 cricket with a strike rate, I think, if memory's correct, in the mid-130s, without playing reverse sweeps, ramp shots, laps. You don't need it because all of those shots are predominantly premeditation.
Yeah, he was phenomenal against Pakistan. What an innings. And you're right, he charged once or twice, but apart from that, there was no premeditation at all, was there?
And even at one stage, I think he had 13 of 22 balls, and he's ended 81, 82 not out, or 52 or 53.
Yeah, that was the best game of cricket I've ever seen.
Playing conventional cricket shots.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's right. Actually, one of the guys I train with who's an Australian rep, I've sort of spoke to him about, I said, what about a reverse and what about a sweep? And because I struggle with the sweep, he said, Cam, you do everything else okay. You don't need that other stuff. And well, there you go. That's the advanced course blown, Gio. I
yeah,
thought that was the advanced stuff.
no, but you don't. Well, if you want your average to start dropping because you're taking more premeditated risk, that's the way to go.
Oh,
You
oh,
know,
that's only for showing off, mate. That
yeah,
stuff.
or refine and develop your skills so that you actually can manipulate the ball at will. And I think the biggest key is also, it was quite funny. I did a short post about it the other day. In the post-match interview, Ravish asked me, those 2 sixes of Ralph had to be premeditated. It was premeditated, right? It's like, no, I knew I needed to hit some sixes, but it just happened. I trusted myself, and that first one, it bounced up and I just hit it.
Yeah. Yeah, that back foot drive over the bowler's head. Didn't even look mechanically possible, did it? Like, how do you do that?
All the release of
And
the bat.
he's not even a big dude.
Yeah.
If Dwayne Bravo did that, I could have thought, okay. But it just shows you, doesn't it?
Fundamentally an efficient flow of the bat.
Yeah.
And you also going, I got to get in the gym. I want to get stronger. I want to clear the ropes. Man, how's he doing it? He's not a big guy. There's guys even smaller than him hitting the ball further than him. It's about
that's
efficiency
right.
of movement and timing.
Yeah.
Your contact points and understanding them. That's even why that's why we did no power hitting training.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing I was going to suggest for the advanced course. But you're right. I do it anyway.
Fundamentally sound is fundamentally sound.
Do the same stuff and meet the ball a bit earlier.
Exactly. But that's how simple it is. But then you got all these gimmicks and, oh man, it drives me crazy when you see all these things putting bands around people and holding their hip back. And this, all you're doing is getting people to consciously think about all of these mechanics and feel these resistances. It's like, mate, well, just train a fundamentally efficient swing, develop a natural bat flow. And then, like you rightly said, well, it's just about then understanding your contact points. Later means it goes into the ground closer. And then you just got your varying degrees of contact points. And then can you manipulate the ball? It's that easy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Cam, anything else? We've covered a lot here. Thank you.
No, I hope that was useful. Again, I've got to say, I'd encourage any of the vets, if anyone listens. And there's some fabulous blokes. Vets cricket is wonderful, There's a lot better cricketers than me in it. There's a lot of very keen guys. But, I'd encourage people to get coaching and to go through the program. For me, it was a really good experience. And it's definitely changed everything. We've got Adelaide Nationals coming up in 3 weeks. Telf's organising it.
Oh, brilliant.
Done a huge job from what I've seen.
Yeah, he's doing a massive job online with his Spirit of Cricket. It looks like it's picking up some really good momentum. We're really happy for him.
Yeah, he's a machine, isn't he? It's fantastic for him.
Cam, I've got one last question for you. How would you respond to this? So somebody asked me yesterday on a diagnosis call, what's the success rate like? Because you see all these wonderful stories, are people failing? So what would your answer be to somebody who asks a question like that?
I think it depends on them. I think it's up to them whether they're successful or not. The process is correct and the tools worked on me. And we've all got brains and muscle. So I think that depends on their attitude to it. If they do the practice and do what they're taught, it'll eventually work.
Yeah, I just said to him,
you didn't give me any preparation for that one.
But that's the answer. We've been talking about work ethic, feedback, and I think my answer to him was like, well, if you show up and you do the work consistently, but if you don't show up, it's like anything in life. You don't show up, you fail.
Yeah, that's right.
Brilliant. Cam, thank you so much for your time. I mean, also some absolute gems there, work ethic and feedback loops. which I think probably the two biggest takeaways for me, certainly. And yeah, mate, again, I really enjoyed working with you. One of the hardest working people I've worked with. And I think a lot of people could learn a lot from this discussion and your attitude and approach, not only to your cricket, but everything in life. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Am I still your oldest student ever?
Got a 58-year-old Kiwi in at the moment.
Oh, he's still younger than me, mate.
And he's training and submitting drill work almost as religiously and consistently as you. So I'm excited for him.
Oh, very good. All right, Gio. Thank you, mate.
Some very similar aspects there with the shoulders and the bat coming sort of across a little bit, but
mate, we're a good vintage, Gio. That's what it is.
Yeah, we're pretty close to moving off his point of contact training now.
Yeah, okay, excellent.
Maybe week 5 or 6. So
yeah, no, he's probably doing better than me, mate. So no, thanks a lot, Gio. Really good.
Pleasure. All right, thanks, Cam. Take it easy. Have a great evening.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.